All right. Shall we begin?
This is a big class.
It's pretty big, no? In sales they say, let the product talk for itself. But I really do believe that this course could really be life-changing. It's very special, this course. It's a great topic, how happiness thinks. So I want to welcome everybody here in person and joining us here on Zoom as well.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Is happiness in this particular case a verb or a noun?
Ooh, it's both. It is both. Hello, Friedmans.
Hello.
How are you?
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom. You gotta take a book. Take some books. We have grapes there,
Okay.
and they're the edible grapes. So you're supposed to eat them. At my grandparents' house, they always had a bowl on the kitchen table of wax things. So you don't eat those, but these we eat. So I want to encourage everybody to eat and enjoy. They say fruits are better than caffeine to freshen the mind and get those good juices flowing. So, okay. A few quick little announcements. Number one, today is Rosh Chodesh Av. Today we start the month of Av, which actually traditionally in Judaism is a month of decreasing joy. Our sages tell us that when the month of Av comes, one should decrease in joy because it's the month of the destruction of the Holy Temple, the month of destruction of Jerusalem, and we as Jews don't forget that. But there's a beautiful thing. If you look at the wording of the Talmud, it doesn't say stop being joyous. It doesn't say start being sad. It says decrease in joy. It says still be joyous. You still got to be happy. A Jew is never off the hook from being happy. Just turn it down a notch. So in that spirit, ironically, there's even an idea that even in this month we should be focusing and promoting our inner joy, our happiness, and cultivating it. Next week, Wednesday, very interestingly, Wednesday evening begins the fast day of Tisha B'Av. So originally I thought I'm going to skip that week. I don't know, start do a class right before Tisha B'Av starts. Tisha B'Av begins at 9 o'clock p.m. So we're going to be ending the class, going straight into Tisha B'Av. So originally I thought I'm going to cancel. I called up my rabbi, my Rav, to ask him the halachic question. What should I do? Should I cancel or do I continue? He says, no, you can't cancel. If there's a set, scheduled Torah study for a large group of Jews, you're not allowed to cancel it. He says it's a good thing, bring Jews together, and you can start the fast together, and maybe we'll even read together next week right after class. If anybody wants to stay, we'll do the traditional reading of the Megillah of Eicha, of Lamentations, which we traditionally read together on Tisha B'Av. So 9 o'clock the fast starts, and then right afterwards, next week, whoever wants to stay, we'll start the fast together. We'll not eat together. We'll stop eating at 9 o'clock, and for those who want to stay, we'll do the reading of Eicha. And usually we are also in the Federation. Okay. That's that. Okay. This course is accredited for continuing education for social workers. Isn't that a beautiful world we live in? That we could come and study Torah, and you could even get professional credits for. So dear friends, here we are. How happiness thinks. We'll be together for the next 6 weeks. I'll tell you a little story. Once upon a time, there was a Jewish mother. Once upon a time. And she had 3 sons. Each of them were very successful, exceptional, each in their own field. And she was about to celebrate her 75th birthday. And all the sons, these are big professionals. They're big shots, big machers. And they don't have the time to come in for the birthday. So they each decided, you know what? We'll send to our mom a very special birthday gift for such a special milestone. The oldest son decides that he's going to be buying his mom a beautiful lakefront home. Very large, spacious, beautiful. It's like that she could live comfortably. She doesn't have to live in this little condo. It's a little bit sekvetched, a little bit tight, a little bit small. The second son hears this, not to be outdone. What do we do for mom? So the second son says, you know what? She's driving some beat up old car, buying her a fleet of luxury vehicles. It's like that. Whenever she wants to go anywhere, she could choose. She has variety. And the nice new house has a large garage. We could fit them all in. Beautiful. The third son says, okay, what do we do now? She already has a beautiful house, a mansion, these luxury vehicles. So he says, I'll do something a little bit creative. He goes and he buys for millions of dollars a parrot, a pet parrot for his mom. And this parrot, you won't believe it, knew how to sing opera. She loved opera. So this parrot could sing opera. And knew literature, poetry and literature. And the parrot could even say it in the old American accent. So it sounds very authentic. And sends it to the mom. So now on her 75th birthday, they send a letter to mom, a joint letter, and they say that we're too busy, we can't come in, flying from out of town, but we're sending you a limousine, we're going to move you in, we're sending a moving company, you're going to move into new house, new vehicles, and a pet parrot to keep you company. A week later, all three boys get back a letter from mom. And mom says, my dear sons, I'm so touched that even though you were too busy to show up for my birthday, you gave me such beautiful gifts, but I have to be honest, this is a little bit too much for me. This mansion, I tried living in there for a few days. I'm spending a whole day just running around, vacuuming and dusting, and I can't even keep up. By the time I finish the last room, I got to start all over again. Too many rooms. So I put the mansion up for sale already. I want to move back to my old condo. And the cars, one of them got a flat tire. You know how much money it costs for these tires to replace and the rims? I don't even know how to drive these cars. They're too fancy. I like my old car. But the third son, at least he understood what I liked. The chicken tasted wonderful. Hey, don't worry, it's just a joke. It's just a joke. Okay. What's the story? We all have different things that make us happy. Each one of us different. And life is very much, whether we are conscious of it or subconsciously, we are all on the pursuit of happiness. And it's even our right? We have the right for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Isn't that interesting? It doesn't say life, liberty, and happiness. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There's like a subtle irony over there that you could go after. I don't know if you'll find it, but you could pursue it. You're welcome to pursue. Will you find it? Okay, well, God willing, we'll be finding it over here. And I'll tell you something interesting. The area of psychology, and Perry will let me know if I'm getting this right, the area of positive psychology is relatively new. So the area of mental health, of dealing with people who are struggling with mental illness, that's been around for quite a while. But only in the past few decades, there's been this tremendous focus on what we call positive psychology, which is not to look at people who are suffering from depression or sadness and how to treat them, but it's about how to take what we'll call happy people, healthy people, but just who maybe have bad days every now and then, and really make their lives even more happy. So positive psychology, a relatively new field, but interestingly, in Judaism, this is a very, very old field. This is a very, very ancient and timeless and traditional field of Jewish tradition. Joy. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. But first, let's take a moment, and as we're about to immerse ourselves in the field of happiness, let's take a moment and open up your books on page 10. And we have here a little exercise for yourself. This is just for yourself. Just like that, we could start identifying how we think currently about happiness. So let's take 3 minutes. We don't have more than 3 minutes. And fill out these 4 questions. And maybe we'll get some quick ideas out. Okay. While you're doing it, you could still do it if you would like, but let me just get some quick ideas on the table here. Question number 1. How are happy people different from unhappy people? What do you say? Let's get some quick. They smile. Okay, very good. What else?
Pleasant to be with.
They're pleasant. Okay, that's a good one. What else?
They don't see everything as a bad thing that happens.
Not everything is negative.
Attitude is more positive.
They've got a good attitude and they see life from that good attitude. Very good. What else? Yes?
They're grateful.
They're grateful. They're grateful for life. They're grateful for the gifts of life. Very good.
More friendly?
They're more friendly, right? So they're funner to be around.
Yeah. More productive.
Yes, more productive. Very good.
Energetic.
Very good. Next question. To what degree, from 1 to 10, to what degree do our circumstances, our family, our education, career, etc., impact our overall happiness? How much does our circumstances play a role in how happy we are? What do you say? A lot? A little? Not at all. 100%, you say? So it's fully in the hands of circumstances? 50, which means it's a factor, but not the whole thing.
50% circumstances, 50% genes.
Okay, so you're even blaming it on genetic, but even genetic you could say is circumstantial, because we don't control our genes.
Oh, okay.
Circumstance means the things that happen to you, the things that are imposed upon you. So a lot, for the most part, our circumstances are beyond our control. What did you want to say?
Well, it depends on how you respond to it, what you see is going on. You know, if you have a positive attitude that things are supposed to be as they're supposed to be, then whatever happens, you work with it and see what you need to do.
So you're saying it's all about attitude, how you process circumstances. Okay, very good. So we're a little bit divided on that. Number 3, what are some of the biggest challenges, main challenges to living life of happiness? What would you say?
How do you behave?
No. What are the things that get in the way of our happiness? That's the question.
Political mishegas.
Politics gets in the way. I think it's definitely true today. What else?
Expectations.
Expectations that set ourselves up for failure, that set ourselves up for disappointment.
Health issues, Rabbi.
Health issues, yeah. Health issues could get in the way. Very good. What else? What are some of the other things that get in the way of happiness?
Climate change.
So, climate change.
Yes.
So you're saying worldly issues, worldly problems in the world. Yes.
Financial.
Finances, yes, 100%. Money stress, financial stress. Very good.
Disappointments.
Whenever things are disappointing things that get in the way of, that mess up our day. Yeah, kill our mood. Okay, now last thing, what are some of the benefits of living happily? What are some of the benefits that happen when we are happy? Or that we could hope when what was that?
Health benefits.
Health benefits. When you're happy, you also
Healthier.
physically healthier. What else?
More restful sleep.
You sleep better, right? That's beautiful.
Live longer.
That's a good one. Live longer. You think you'll live longer? Very good, okay.
Yes, happy people, I think, live longer, have a good health.
I should have charged more for this course. Look at all you guys. You have high expectations here. All right, listen, let's see. Let's see. Better friendships. Better friendships. Very good. These are all very, very important things. So, dear friends, I want you to keep in mind these questions because these are definitely at the core of our pursuit of happiness. And today's lesson, and the following 5 lessons, we're going to be exploring all these issues. Things that get in the way of happiness. What are the benefits of happiness? What is the role of our circumstances in happiness, etc. So, dear friends, as we jump into today's class, here we go. Number 1, today's class is, Lesson 1 is titled The Joy of Being You, Finding a Self-Concept of Happiness. But we'll be getting into the specific topic in a moment. I want to first give a little bit of an introduction for this course. So before we jump into today's specific topic, a little bit of a general introduction. So number 1, these are going to be the 3 points we're going to be talking about today. Number 1 is the power of happiness. Number 2 is the key to happiness. Is somebody knocking on the front door? You got it? Okay. All right. The key to happiness. And these are going to be the introduction points. And then number 3, we'll get to today's specific topic, the self-concept of happiness. So that's going to be our journey for the next hour or so. So let us begin with the power of happiness. And I want to ask you a simple question. Hello, Sheldon. Take a book. Take some grapes. Make yourself at home.
We're out of the.
You're out of books? Wow, look at that. Here you go.
Oh, here, give him mine.
No. I got an extra one right over here. I always have backups like that.
Thank you.
When the VIP come in, they could get one.
I'll trade you.
There you go. Trade. Okay, wonderful. All right.
Wait.
So I want to ask you all a question. You see, this is the problem. I never know how many people are going to be coming in person or on Zoom. So, okay. All right. But look at this. This is wonderful. And a few surprises, which is always wonderful. Okay. I want to ask you a question. You are all obviously interested in the topic of happiness. Who isn't, by the way? Well, the question is if you want to actually do something about it. But everybody wants happiness. The question is why? Why do you want to be happy? Why be happy? Who said you have to be happy?
Why not? Makes
Oh.
you feel better.
So most people don't think too much about why I want to be happy. Or as you say, it makes us feel better. And everybody knows we want to feel good. Happiness, we know, is a good way to feel. We don't feel good when we're not happy, so we want to be happy. But let's actually, think about it maybe a little bit more philosophically. Why should I as a rabbi be offering this course? Is it just because it's a hot topic, so why not? It's a good course to do. Is Judaism interested in us being happy? Unfortunately, the common perception is that religion is not necessarily a happy affair. Am I right on that? Like fun is for an amusement park. Fun is not really at a synagogue. Which, by the way, why do American Jews have that perception? Because when do American Jews show up to synagogue?
Yom Kippur.
Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. If you're looking for Judaism to look happy, that's the wrong day to show up. Okay. But that's an interesting question. Why are we doing this? I think it's a very important question to ask. The premise for this course. Why is this something that even in the summer, when people are less interested at 7:30 at night to come sit in a room and study, why is this important? And I want to share with you why it's important. Being happy is a tremendous Jewish value. Judaism is not just about do a mitzvah, study Torah, but one of the most important parts of being a Jew is to be happy. And from that perspective, there is a religious value, there's Jewish value in putting in the effort, showing up, and working on promoting our own happiness. And I want to share with you a little video to explore this little idea with you about the importance of happiness and the benefits of happiness and the power of happiness. I want to show you a little bit of a video. This video shows a little bit, very briefly, some scientific studies of the benefits of happiness. And this is very, very interesting. So take a look over here, and here we go.
In the film Annie Hall, Woody Allen suggests that happy people are shallow and empty, have no ideas and nothing interesting to say. Woody Allen may have been funny, but according to recent scientific studies, he was wrong. Research has shown that happy people show more flexibility and ingenuity in their thinking, are more productive in their jobs, are better leaders, and they even earn more money. A fascinating and now classic study demonstrates a link between happiness and longevity. The Nun study focused on 180 nuns who joined convents in Milwaukee and Baltimore between 1931 and 1943. On entering the convent, the nuns wrote an autobiography describing their lives and reasons for joining a religious order. Years later, researchers at Kentucky University analyzed these autobiographies. Based on the level of positive feeling expressed in each autobiography, the nuns were categorized into 4 groups, ranging from the happiest 25% to the least happy 25%. Research results showed that 90% of the most cheerful group were alive at age 85, versus 34% of the least cheerful group. 54% of the most cheerful group was alive at age 94, as opposed to 11% of the least cheerful group. Those who used many words expressing positive emotion lived on average over 10 years longer than those who used few such words. Research has also shown that being genuinely happy is an indicator for successful relationships. At the University of California at Berkeley, researchers studied 141 senior class photos of women from the 1960 yearbook of Mills College. They examined their smiles. Half of the women had genuine smiles, the so-called Duchenne smile, in which the corners of the mouth turn up and the skin around the eyes crinkle. And half the women had inauthentic smiles, known as the Pan American smile, after the flight attendants in television ads for the now defunct airline. The women were contacted at ages 27, 43, and 52, and asked about their marriages and their life satisfaction. It was found that, on average, women who genuinely smiled in their photos were more likely to be married, stay married, and experience more personal well-being over the next 30 years. Numerous studies indicate that happiness leads to success at work, better health, and good relationships. Why is this so? Why does happiness result in so many positive byproducts? What do you think?
All right. Isn't that nun study amazing? That is pretty crazy. The nuns who are happier literally lived a lot longer. So the scientific data is in. People who are happy, we don't know why yet, but we know the facts. Being happy is really a very big key to life. Happiness, wealth, success, relationships, health, longevity. Saying these are the big stuff over here. What I want to ask you is why? What is it about happiness that promotes all these things? So health, you could say because you're stressed out less. Less stress, you're probably going to live healthier. Okay. But how more money? Why better relationships necessarily? You know, it's like, it seems like happiness touches every single corner of life. What do you say?
I think if you walk in a room and you saw two people, a happy person and a sad person, who would you want to hang out with? Which is going to lead to relationships, and who do you want to work with?
Who do you want to be with?
Who do you want to work with?
Who do you want to cut a deal with?
Right.
Which salesperson do you want to say yes to? It's true, right? I'm saying it really works. I'm saying life is all about relationships. Life is all about sales. Right? Happiness really is contagious. People like happy people. There's a lot of reasons. And it even makes sense intuitively why happy people get all these good gifts. But if you look at Jewish mysticism, at the teachings of Hasidus, at the teachings of Kabbalah, it really helps us understand the power of happiness. So I want to read with you this next text. We're going to start our first text here. We'll go around the room as usual. We've got lots of good texts to study tonight. So let us do this first text, which is from the Tanya, which for those of you who know is such a beloved book that we study over here. So Joey, text 1 on page 12. Let us do our first text for tonight.
This should be known as a cardinal principle. The internal spiritual battle waged against one's negative impulses is similar to a physical wrestling match. If two individuals are wrestling with each other, each striving to fell the other, but one is lazy and lethargic, he will fail and be easily defeated, even if he is stronger than his opponent. Same applies regarding the conquest of one's impulses. It is impossible to defeat them from a state of laziness and heaviness, which stem from sadness and a dull heart, but only from a state of brisk enthusiasm, which derives from happiness and a heart free from any trace of worry and sadness in the world.
This text, a Hasidic text of Jewish spirituality, says, if you want to be successful in self-mastery, basically being in control of life, controlling your life versus life controlling you, you got to be happy. If you're not going to be happy, you could be strong inside, but you're not going to end up performing. You're not going to have good performance. Now, why is this? Jewish spirituality says something very interesting. Every single one of us as humans have tremendous power, potential, strengths. We have so much to bring to the table. We're all very capable, talented human beings. The problem is that not always are we performing at 100%. Not always are all of our good energies showing up to the table. Happiness is not just an emotional state of being. Are you happy or you're not happy? Happiness is the key to the flow of energy, to the literal flow of life in our lives. So being happy in a certain way is synonymous with life itself. When we are happy, life flows, literal life flows, full throttle. Open up those pipelines. Sadness is not just an emotional state, it shuts down life, which is actually how we feel it. Sometimes we know that we are capable of certain things, but when we're not in a good mood, we just can't get ourselves to do it. We have all that good energy, but it's locked up. The pipelines are closed. And it's interesting, even in the English language, we say that. Somebody who's very happy, we say they're so full of life. When somebody is sad, we say they're dead inside. That's how Jewish spirituality sees it. Joy is so vital because it's life itself. Do you want to live? You got to be happy. If you want to be able to show up to life and take control over your situations, invest in your relationships with a spouse, with children. If you want to be successful at work with ingenuity, if you want to have patience, if you want to be able to invest in life, work hard, all of these things, you need happiness in order to do it. So from this perspective, Judaism says, you want to be successful in life? You have to be successful. And I don't mean successful making money. I mean successful in living life. There's a life to live. You got to be happy. If you're not happy, you're not living life. And this is a reason, according to Jewish spirituality, why happy people are successful. Because they're living life. They've got a life to live. They've got the energy, the power, the potential of life, and the gifts of life, and they can show up to the table with it. They have that energy. They have that power. So this is the first idea, which is a very simple idea. But this is how Jewish spirituality sees it. For a Jew to be a successful Jew, you got to be happy. If you're not happy, it's not going to work. Let's put that up over here. The first idea is that happiness leads to success and self-mastery because it unleashes our inner powers and drives our strengths to flow outward.
So
Yes.
it's true also in management and business with people. If an employee is enthusiastic, they're gonna do a better job.
All right.
If they feel like they're heard, if you're listening and they feel like they have skin in the game, they're gonna do a much better job than just dully going
sure.
to work. And
For
doing-
sure, yeah. Happiness is very, very vital.
Right.
So what we're doing over here is Judaism sees happiness not just as a feel-good emotional state to be in, a feel-good disposition. I want to be happy because it feels good. No. You got to be happy. You don't want to be happy. You got to be happy. You know why? Because if you're not happy, I could promise you're going to start failing in life. And that's no good. That's why Judaism sees happiness as tremendous value. But it goes even further, it goes even deeper. And I want to dabble for a moment into real Kabbalah over here. According to Kabbalah, being happy is very vital for this reason. I want to read a text with you, which comes from the Zohar, from the classical work of Jewish mysticism. And this is an unbelievable text. And Sheldon, you read one. Let's read text 3a on page 14. And here we go. This is powerful.
Come and observe. Our world is always ready to receive the spiritual flow that emanates from above. The upper world provides in accordance with the state below. If the state below is joyous, then correspondingly abundance flows from above. But if the state below is one of sadness, then correspondingly the flow of blessing is constricted. Therefore, serve God with joy, because human joy draws a corresponding supernal joy.
Okay. I want to unpack this. This is an unbelievable text. So number one, the Zohar says, come and observe. Our world is always ready to receive, which means, and by the way, I'll put in a shameless plug, our fall course is titled The World of Kabbalah. We'll be doing a real proper tour of the entire spiritual structure of Kabbalah and its relevance to our lives. And that's coming up in November. So stay tuned. Okay. The way it works is Kabbalah teaches us that we are living in the physical world, which is on the bottom of this entire chain of spiritual reality. And there's energy and what we call effluence. There's a stream of the sustenance of our world that flows from the spiritual worlds down to our physical world. And this is the source of everything that happens in our world, in our personal lives, in the larger world at large. Everything is flowing from a higher source of energy. So if we have blessings of health, if we have blessings of success, all of these things are coming from the spiritual worlds. So we are recipients that God sends down through this entire chain, blessings and spiritual energy. But, and here's the big but, we are not just passive recipients. Kabbalah tells us that we affect the state above. Whatever our mood is, that is the energy above as well. It's a little bit like rain. All rain that comes down first came from down here below. So if the water that goes up is good rain and clean rain and good water, then what comes down? Good water. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If the water that goes up is toxic, then what's the rain going to look like? It's also going to be toxic. So whatever you send up is going to come right back down. That's exactly how it works with our blessings in life. We are the ones causing what type of energy we get down. When we are happy, God and the spiritual worlds, there's a happy disposition, a happy mood. And then when there's happiness, there's abundance. If it's the opposite, when we're sad, everything is more constricted. Because the exact same way it works with us is the way it works above. We all know that within us, just like we said before, when we're happy, it's full throttle. All the energy of life is going, and we're a lot more loose. We're a lot less tight. We're a lot less constricted. We're a lot less confined. Think about it even as parents. When a parent is in a good mood and a little kid asks for something, we're a lot happier to give. When we're in a bad mood, we're a lot more exacting. We're a lot more disciplined. And the same thing happens. When we are happy, the nature of things coming from above is happy as well. And let's read this next text, which explains a little bit more the science, the spiritual mechanism of this idea. So Jim, why don't you give us a read? You want to give us a read? Text 3b on page 15. You got a big one.
When a person is happy, he stands above all his personal limitations and weaknesses. He can do things that he ordinarily could not do. He can forgive his worst enemy. His joy generates inner energy that breaks through and shatters any barrier that stands in his way. When a person creates joy in the spiritual realm, the same thing happens. In the spiritual realm, there are also limitations and barriers, for God has chosen to establish a natural order through which he controls our world. Just as these are rules of nature that govern the physical world around us, there are principles of
Causality, I think.
thank you, that govern the effects produced by our conduct. On the most general level, these rules follow the following principle. When a person does good, he receives benefit that enables him to continue in his path. If he fails to do good, he will suffer difficulties that make it obvious to him that he should change his ways. These are the patterns of causation that God chose to establish in the spiritual realm. Nevertheless, when a person is besimcha, joyous, he creates joy in the spiritual realm. God himself is, so to speak, also besimcha. This causes God to reveal a transcendent dimension that is not bound by the laws of causation mentioned above. In simple terms, this means that God will give great blessings and make positive things happen, even though normally these blessings would not be granted.
Keep on going. Got 2 more lines. There you go.
By radiating simcha, we can awaken simcha above and affect a radical change in the situation before us.
Okay, this is a very, very big idea. So let's just recap this idea over here. And thank you, Jim. That's a big text. This is the cosmic nature of joy. There's a law of supernal cause and effect. When we are happy, we create joy in the divine realm, which causes God to reveal a dimension of blessing that transcends all limitations. That even if usually we are not deserving of this blessing, but because there's a joyous energy, more energy flows down. More blessings flow. So, if you would ask a neurologist, if you would ask a psychologist, why are happy people more successful in life, they'll give you their answers. And those answers are true. But if you go into Kabbalah, they'll teach you what's really behind over here. There's 2 ideas. Number 1, people who are happy are more successful in life because they're using all their gifts of life. They're bringing all of their potentials to the table. And therefore they can be successful. They have self-mastery. They're in control of their lives. They could deal with every single struggle, every single problem, not only struggles, everything you have to deal with. They take on head on. And even deeper, happy people get more blessings. You know why they make more money? Because God is giving them more blessings for financial success. You want to know why? Because they're happy. And God mirrors that energy as well. So we get more. So dear friends, the idea here is, the premise over here is, that we're not just learning about happiness because it is a feel-good. It feels good to be happy, so let's try to be happier. There's a spiritual value to it. We even cause God to be happy. This is vital. And this is the idea, as the Zohar quoted in text 3a, quoting the verse from Psalms, serve God with joy. It's not enough to serve God. It has to be done with joy. Judaism is a joyous affair, contrary to the stereotypes. Judaism has to be joyous. A Jew is joyous, and that has to be how a Jew is. So, of course, what's the next $1 million question? So how do we be happy? It seems so important. There are so many benefits. So how do we do it? And dear friends, this is where we're going to go to the next point of today. What is the key to happiness? So how do we get to happiness? Happiness is very, very elusive. That's the truth. Everybody wants it. Unfortunately, too many people don't have it. And it seems a little bit difficult to pinpoint. What is it really that makes us happy? Like I once heard one of these corny jokes, like a Laffy Taffy joke. Who are the two kings that made their people happy? You want to know what the two kings were? Drinking and smoking. Okay. All right, that was a corny joke. Straight up. Okay. What makes us happy? What is the key to happiness?
Good health.
The amazing thing is, you're saying good health.
Yeah, I think it's important.
So what if somebody's not healthy?
And family, like, you know.
So what if you're not healthy? What if you don't have a good family? You can't be happy?
No.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, you can.
How about just accepting, some sort of acceptance of your situation?
we don't even have to go too far. It's in the very word itself. The very word happy. A word in the English language. Let's look at the etymology. Let's look at the very word happy or happiness itself. What are similar words in the English language to the word happy or happiness? That share the exact same, what was that? Happen. Very good. Happen. What does happy have to do with happen? What else? What other words?
Good things that happen make you happy.
Oh, and bad things that happen? Take away your happiness. So happy, happen. What else? What are some other words in the English language that share that same, those very same letters? Happy, happen,
Hapless,
hapless.
opposite.
Right, there's happy and then there's hapless. You don't have hap. What's hap?
Happenstance.
Happenstance. So what's hap? There's happy, there's hapless, there's happen, happenstance. What does hap mean? It means luck or chance. Like it happened. It just happened. The word happiness itself shears. It's part of this larger family of words. Happenstance, which means it just happened, a chance happening. Haphazard, there's something random that happened. Hapless, which means unlucky, the lack of hap. Or then there's just hap. This is the root word. Hap means luck. So what is it? The shorish, right? So what does it mean to be happy? If you have hap, you could be happy. If you don't have hap, you're hapless. You can't be happy. It's built into the very word that we use in the English language, and it's definitely a very big part of Western culture. This is the premise of the word happiness. Two points. Number one, happiness comes from our circumstances, things that we have. You have good health, you have good looks, you have good finances, good relationships, you're happy. And the next point is, these things are a roll of the die. Either you do have it or you don't have it. If you happen to have it, you could be happy. You've got happy, you could be happy. If it didn't happen to you, then you're out of luck. You're out of hap. You can't be happy. That is really what it means. So the very word in the English language tells us the way we Americans look at happiness. It's all about circumstances. It's a roll of the die.
Out of our control.
It's out of our control. You want to be happy? Too bad on you. Either you will or you won't. You know, some of these things you could control, but at the end of the day, if you don't have good health, you don't have good health. You know what are you supposed to do about that? Let's say studies say people in warmer climates are happier. Could we pick up tomorrow and just move to Hawaii? To a certain degree, we're stuck in this hap. We live in Michigan, not the best place for warmth.
Very much the Hellenistic view of the world.
It's taking the keys, it's taking the keys of our lives. And happiness is not just emotion, right? We already said it's life itself. It's taking the keys to our lives and throwing it in the ocean, saying, it's out of my control. Now, number one, it's not a very comforting sentiment to hear that happiness is totally out of our control. And our generation is the guinea pig to know that it's not true. Because it happens to be, pun intended, not pun, I'm saying this is part of the hap situation. It happens to be that our generation has the most comfort, the most health, the most finances, the most opportunities, the most affluence, and the most good looks, which should, according to this theory, produce tremendous happiness. So if any generation should be happy, it should be our generation. We should have so much happiness because we have so much good hap that we shouldn't even know what to do with it. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So let's read this next text, which is a very scary text. This is a study which is a little bit dated. It's 20 years old, but it only got worse since this study. Let's read text 5. Lewis, are we up to you? Up to you, Lewis, right? Text 5, page 18.
One of the first empirical studies to provide a glimpse into problems of affluent youth was a comparative investigation of low-income urban 10th graders and their upper socioeconomic status suburban counterparts. The sample included 264 suburban students who were mostly from Caucasian white-collar families and 224 inner-city youth who were predominantly minority and of low SES. Affluent youth reported significantly higher levels of anxiety across several domains and greater depression. They also reported significantly higher substance use than inner-city students, consistently indicating more frequent use of cigarettes, alcohol, marijuana, and other illicit drugs.
All right, this text is dating itself by saying that marijuana was illegal. Okay, but in any case, remember those times? All right. It's a very scary thought. Seemingly, our youth should be the most happy. And it seems not just that they're not happier, that would be one problem, but they're even more miserable. So, if there's any generation that proves this point and how wrong it is, it's our generation. We know, unfortunately, all too well, that hap has nothing to do with happiness, even though the word is all built on hap. So then what is it? So let's look at the Hebrew word, the word that the Torah uses. The word in Hebrew is simcha, or bisimcha, which is the adjective. Sorry, the verb, to be happy. Bisimcha is to be in a happy disposition. We'll quote again from the Zohar. Kabbalah comes and teaches us the key of happiness. Unbelievable text. Toby, text 6, page 19.
The letters forming the Hebrew word for simcha with joy are the same letters that spell machshava, thought.
Okay, I want to show you the magic happen, but first I want to show you something, just a cute little thing over here. All right, I forgot who said this quote, but a guy goes into the CEO for his raise. Money can't buy happiness, Sims. So instead of a raise, I'm giving you a bottle of Prozac. Okay. Or you know the line, money can't buy happiness, but at least it could give misery to some other people. Okay, I don't know who said that one. The Jewish key to happiness is all in the word. Now, watch the magic happen. When we spell the word bisimcha in Hebrew, the exact same letters spell the word machshava, which is thought.
Choshev.
Like choshev, lachshov, machshava. Judaism takes those keys to happiness and puts it right back in your hands and says, no. Circumstances actually has nothing to do with happiness. Nothing. It doesn't hurt, but it doesn't cause happiness. At the end of the day, the way we produce happiness is through our own minds, our own thoughts. Happiness is a thought process. It's a thinking. It's an attitude. The good news is, our circumstances we have no control over. But one of the very few things we actually have control over in our lives is how we think. Even how we feel, we don't necessarily have so much control over. But what we're thinking, we have absolute full control over. And in that sense, Judaism places the keys to happiness right back firmly in your hands. You just got to know how to think. There's a way how happiness thinks. If you know how happiness thinks, you could be happy. It's actually very simple. So the obvious question is, so how does happiness think? And my answer to you is, boy, do I got a course for you. So dear friends, this is what Judaism is built on. The premise of happiness in Judaism is that happiness is something you can have full control over. Even if your circumstances are not that great, you could be 100% happy, and you should be 100% happy, and therefore you must be 100% happy. How do you do it? You just got to study things that give you the proper attitudes, give you the proper outlook to life. And over the next 6 weeks, will God willing do that? Look at exactly how Judaism sees happiness, gives us the tools of how to see life, our own lives, the life that we live, the world around us, and in a way that could, God willing, really change the way we think and therefore literally produce the happiness that we need in our brains. So dear friends, let us get on with the show. These are the words. Besimcha means with joy. Machshava is thought. And this is the premise of this course. And that's why the name of the course is How Happiness Thinks. It's a very Jewish name. There's a lot of depth in the name of this course. The premise of this course that happiness thinks. It's all about how you think. So dear friends, let us begin with the very first understanding of how happiness thinks. And this is going to be an idea that we'll explore right now over the next 40 minutes. But as we go on through the future lessons, we're going to appreciate today's concept more. So I'm going to lay down the groundwork, but it's a big idea. It's even a little bit of a deep idea. And it's going to take time, I think, until our brains are really able to wrap our heads around it. So we're going to set down the premise today, and you'll see we're going to be building upon this in the future lessons. The self-concept of happiness, part 3 of today's class, which is like this. Before we get to any other issues of happiness, dealing with stress, dealing with pain, and circumstances, we want to first talk about ourselves. How do we see ourselves? What is the self-concept, the self-image that promotes happiness, and what is the one that we shouldn't be having? To define exactly how Judaism wants us to view our very own selves, which is conducive, which is the proper frame of mind that leads us to live a life of happiness. And today, again, I'll mention today, this is a very big thing. Especially the youth, they struggle with a lack of happiness and very often surround their own self-image. So we have to, this is very critical. What is the self-image that Judaism wants us to have, which is the way to think that produces the happiness? That's what we're going to be focusing on now. So just to create the two ends of the spectrum, I want to share two ends of a spectrum, which are two ends of self-images that people struggle somewhere in between these two spectrums, these two ends, these two extremes. And we want to try to figure out where exactly is happiness. So I'm first going to share, before we turn to Judaism, we're first going to look at two types of self-images on two opposite ends, and let's try to understand why these types of people struggle with happiness. And if you look on page 20, you kind of see here a little bit the two ends of the spectrum. One end is, I deserve a lot of admiration. Somebody who has a very, very high self-image, very self-confident, very, maybe even arrogant, full of themselves. Maybe they think, on the extreme end, they believe that they're God's greatest gift to mankind. The best invention since sliced bread is them. Like the type of guy, you ever heard this story? A young man goes out on a date with a girl. He's so full of himself, he just sits and talks about himself for 2 hours straight. After 2 hours, he says, enough of me talking. So what do you think about me? Okay, so that's one end of the spectrum. And then the other end of the spectrum is somebody who feels I don't deserve any admiration, or I only deserve very little admiration. I'm not capable, I'm not special, I don't really have much to offer, I'm meek. Everybody's better than me. I don't look good, I'm not that talented, I'm not that strong. Somebody who has a little bit of a lower self-image, a lower self-concept. So let's first start with these two. Now, more or less, we find ourselves somewhere in between, which is healthy, right? On the very low end are people who really feel, unfortunately, feel really down. I'm nobody special. I'm dispensable. I'm no good to anybody. That's a horrible feeling. On the other end, you have these people who are so full of themselves. If you don't believe it, you could ask them. They'll tell you themselves. Judaism maintains on both of these ends, neither of them are happy. You can't be happy with either of these attitudes. And if you can't be happy with either of these attitudes, you're probably not even going to be happy anywhere in between. Because each one of them have their own issues that get in the way, the impediments of happiness. I don't want to go too deep into it, but there's some great text over here that will help us give us a little bit of an idea of why these people suffer from lack of happiness. And I want to move through these rather quickly. So let's start on the one end of the spectrum, which is people who have a low self-image. People who have a low self-image, it makes a lot of sense that they can't be happy. Why? Because when you're not comfortable in your own skin, when you're not happy, when you're not content with who you are, it's very difficult to live a happy life. And it only gets better. There's a few texts over here. I don't want to read them, but I'll just summarize them for you. On page 20 and 21, text 7a, 7b, and 7c. This is from Rabbi Dr. Abraham J. Twersky. And have you ever read his books? You know what I'm talking about? He was a Hasidic rabbi and a top psychiatrist, and a very prolific author, a very, very colorful guy. And he's been here a few times. No French, we brought him down. Have any of you read his books? Okay. You've seen him on YouTube. He just passed away recently. Very, 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 very special guy. Yeah. He was very old. Yeah. Okay. So he writes this, and he shares 3 reasons why people with a low self-image, a negative self-image, are practically not going to be happy. The first thing he says, these people are insecure with their relationships, and therefore they are people pleasers. But they're not people pleasers from a place of strength. They're not looking to help people. They're yes people because they're looking for validation. They're trying to earn their friendships. And then when they don't perceive that they're in a healthy relationship, then they resent all the things that they did for this other people. So these are people who in relationships cannot be happy because they're not coming from a place of health. They're always people pleasers and they end up resenting it. Number 2, he says, these people don't feel well equipped. They don't feel strong. They don't feel capable to deal with life's challenges and life stresses. So when a stressful situation comes up, they just freeze. And they allow even small problems to paralyze them, to debilitate them. And they end up suffering, and just life is a lot more hard for these people. They don't understand how to really deal with life, deal with problems head on. Instead, they just immediately get overwhelmed because they just don't feel they're capable inside. And number 3, he says these people are very overly sensitive, and they get insulted very quickly. And they even have a certain type of paranoia, he says, and they always think people are critical of them. They think people are thinking about them. They think people are talking about them behind their back. And again, these are people who just they're not calm, they're not relaxed, they're not happy. Having a negative self-image is very difficult. This is not the type of attitude that is good for being happy. So feeling low is no good, right? We can all agree on that, right? What about feeling high? What about feeling like a big shot? It's also no good. It's also no good. And I want to share with you 2 or 3 ideas very briefly. Let's look at this text over here. This is about arrogant people. People who make a lot of noise about themselves. This is a text from the Midrash. The Midrash text, this is page 22. The Midrash shares a lot of deep wisdom, but always through parables. For those of you who joined our Book Smart course, we spoke a lot about this, right? The Midrash is always sharing very deep ideas, profound ideas, but always through a metaphor, always through a euphemism. So let's read text 8. Very, very interesting text. On page 22, Larry, we're up to you. Let's read text 8 from the Midrash. Yeah, Larry, we're up to you? Yeah, okay, good.
They said to Euphrates, "Why is your sound not audible?" "My deeds make me known," he replied. "When a person plants a plant next to me, it matures in 30 days. When a person sows a vegetable next to me, it sprouts in 3 days." They said to the Tigris, "Why is your sound audible? If only my voice would be heard, so that I may be noticed," it answered.
Very, very profound. Our sages say sometimes making too much noise comes from a place of insecurity. You're like trying to prove yourself to the world. The Euphrates is a wonderful river. Not that I've ever been there, but this is what the text says. So I'll trust it at face value. The water is great, beautiful fertile ground, good nutrition's in the water and the soil. So Euphrates doesn't have to make a lot of noise. Everybody knows already the Euphrates has what to offer. The Tigris is always making a loud ruckus. Why? It wants people to notice it. Our sages say sometimes when somebody is a little bit too full of themselves, it's maybe a desperate attempt to prove themselves, and it's really coming from a place of insecurity. They themselves are really not comfortable in their own skin. They themselves are not even fully confident in who they are. So in fact, arrogant people, The Talmud teaches us, you think they're so happy. Our sages teach us, not necessarily. It could be a sign of very deep insecurity, and they're looking for validation from the world, like, look, I'm a good guy. Look, I have a lot to offer. That's one potential issue with being arrogant. Arrogance is not good. Not necessarily are arrogant people happy. Then there's another idea, which is a very deep idea, and it's worthy of discussion, but at least I want to touch upon it briefly. We'll read it, and we'll go. Yeah? Page 23, text 9.
Okay. There is more happiness upon receiving a gift than receiving a wage. One does not work for a gift and does not deserve it, so one can be happy upon receiving the gift. But a person works for a wage and deserves it, so there is reason for joy upon receiving it. A person who is overly self-aware, who mistakenly believes himself to be of high standing, who therefore thinks that he deserves everything that he has, this person will have no happiness in all that he has.
This is an idea that Chassidus says. The way human nature works is that when we get something that we worked for, there's a certain pleasure in living off of the fruits of our labors. But at the end of the day, there's no great joy in receiving a paycheck. What do you mean? I'm supposed to be happy? I earned this money. It's coming to me. I'm not happy if I get it. I'm disappointed if I don't get it. The beauty of a gift is that it's extra. You don't deserve it. Somebody's gifting it to you. It's undeserved. And there's a special thrill in that experience, a certain joy. You could really appreciate it. Arrogant people feel that they deserve everything. I deserve attention. They always believe that they should be getting all the opportunities. Why didn't I get this? Why is somebody else getting more attention than me? Why is somebody else getting this opportunity and not me? And that sense of always feeling entitled and deserving of everything robs you from being able to truly be happy for the gifts of life. And instead of realizing that these are gifts of life, you feel that I deserve them. See, even when you get them, you're not happy. You're just complacent. You're just neutral about it. And when you don't get something, you're setting yourself for disappointments. So arrogant people get ticked off much faster. And they get stressed out much faster. Something goes wrong, right away the world just crashed on them. Why? It's this problem. They don't look at life as a gift. Everything is owed to them, and then when something goes away from them, they're all mad. And it gets in the way of happiness. So being arrogant is setting yourself up for failure, because there's always going to be disappointments in life. And arrogant people don't deal well with disappointments for this very reason. And there's also a whole host of other reasons. People don't like arrogant people, so it's not good for relationships. But the list goes on and on. The point is that on neither ends of these spectrums, for a whole host of reasons, which we barely touched upon, neither of these two self-images are conducive for happiness. And I just wanted to share this little premise before we go into the Jewish self-image, which is what I want to leave you with. So let's go through what we just went through. Two self-images and the impediments to human happiness. Number one, somebody who has a negative self-concept. Number one, they're a people pleaser, coming from a place of weakness, and that leads to resentment. These are not happy people. Number two, they feel inadequate. They get very easily stressed out, and situations become overwhelming quickly. And number three, they're extraordinarily sensitive, and they have a very fragile ego. On the opposite end of the spectrum, people who are full of arrogance. Number one, it really might be masking their low self-esteem. You agree? Number two, they're always unhappy with what they have. Even what they have, they're ungrateful for. They always want more. They feel they should deserve more. And number three, they very often, because of that, experience unmet expectations. They're always disappointed. These are not people who are happy. Now, I wanted to go through these because now I want to share with you the Jewish self-image. And I want to contrast it. Judaism has a very interesting criteria. It's going to take us a little bit of time to build up exactly. So it's not a simple title. It's a whole concept of how we look at ourselves, which is very, very unique. What is the type of person who is happy from the Jewish perspective? How do you have to think to be happy? It's all in one verse in the Torah, in the book of Isaiah. What was that?
Gratitude.
Gratitude? No. Gratitude is a byproduct of what I'm about to share with you. the joy-causing self-concept is this verse. It's a verse in Isaiah. The humble shall increase their joy in God. Who gets to be happy? Humble people. People with humility. But we have to define what this means. Some people think that the word humility or being humble is somewhat synonymous with feeling low, feeling little, low self-image. Oh, I'm humble, I can't do that. I'm humble, I'm not capable of that. I'm humble, this is not for me. So, and that's a misguided approach. That's not what humility means. Humility is a very key word in Judaism, and we need to define it. The first thing we need to know is that humility does not mean feeling low. Doesn't mean feeling little. It doesn't mean selling yourself off cheap. Oh, I can't do that. That's not what humility means. We have to understand what humility means. When we understand what humility means, we'll understand why humility is part of happiness, is the way to get to be happy. So what's humility? Let's read this next text. Text 10, on page 24, a quick little line, I'll read it. A quick little line from the Ethics of Our Fathers. Be very, very humble. You know, in grammar, we all know good grammar, you don't use the word very. Right, you know what I'm talking about? Right. The word very is very, like a lawyer never used the word very. I'm very upset. Yeah, just cut out the word very. And very, very is like, you know, that's literally elementary, you know. But in Judaism, you know, the writings of our sages are very concise. They don't throw around words. This is very uncharacteristic. To even have the word very in any statement of our sages is very rare. And to have a double one, I don't even know of any other statement that says this. Not just be very humble, be very, very humble. Judaism is really pushing over here. This is from the Ethics of Our Fathers, from Pirkei Avot. Humility is very, very important. But one second. Is a humble person suffering from a low self-image? Is that humility? Then what is humility? Is it being full of yourself, not full of yourself, feeling high, feeling low? What exactly is humility? So we have this over here, right? Be very, very humble. And the question is this advocating a negative self-concept? So there's a few steps of humility. Let's go through them. We have about 20 minutes. Point number one of humility is knowing exactly who you are. The Jewish definition of humility is based on truth. A low self-concept is not based on truth. It's based on inferiority. People with a low self-image are actually usually denying themselves. They're willing to ignore the strengths that they have. Or they don't even realize the strengths that they have. Humility is actually being very, very conscious of who we are, of our strengths. And Judaism promotes a very, very healthy self-image. Judaism really wants us to look at ourselves as beautiful people. The Ethics of Our Fathers say that how fortunate are the human people, our people, the human race. How lucky are we that we were created in the image of God? That's a very big statement. We're beautiful people. And how much more fortunate are we that God communicated that to us, that we know that. Not only were we created in the image of God, God told us we were created in the image of God. God wants us to know that we reflect Him. And Judaism says a Jew has to know, this is part of humility. This is step one of humility. Knowing that you are a beautiful person. We have flaws. You could look at other people and say, maybe that's not a beautiful person. They don't look so beautiful. The first thing of humility is actually seeing it from a larger perspective. See yourself the way God sees you. The essence of humility is seeing life from a little bit of a larger perspective. Put your life within perspective. Don't see it only from within your limited perspective. See yourself, don't make yourself small, but see yourself from a larger vantage point. And the first step of humility is knowing exactly who you are and fully understanding and appreciating how special you are. There's a beautiful teaching. It's a statement in the Talmud. It's in text 11. I'll tell it to you outside. The Talmud says, interesting discussion in the Talmud. There's a mitzvah to dance in front of a bride and groom and to bring them joy on their wedding day. So you're supposed to go, dance, and sing the praises of the bride and groom. So the Talmud asks the question, so what are you supposed to say in front of the bride? So there are two academies. There's the academy of Shammai, there's the academy of Hillel. The academy of Shammai says, say it as it is. Look at her qualities, and sing her qualities. Be honest. Exactly what you see, that's what you should say. Comes Hillel, the academy of Hillel, and Hillel says, no, every bride you say, she's beautiful and graceful. Comes along Shammai and says, every bride you say she's beautiful and graceful? What if she's not beautiful? What if she's not graceful? You're going to say a lie? The Torah says you're not allowed to lie. But Shammai says, no, every bride you say, she's beautiful and graceful. But Shammai doesn't like that. What if she's not beautiful? So you know what Hillel answers? The Academy of Hillel gives a beautiful answer. They say the fact that this groom chose this bride obviously means that he thinks she's beautiful. And he thinks she's graceful. Ah, you don't think so? Who asked you? This is your wedding? This is your party? What, you think this is a beauty pageant or something? Some Miss America event? No one asked you if she's beautiful. He thinks she's beautiful. You don't even have to look at her. So you say this is a beautiful bride. Stop seeing it from your perspective. It's not your party, it's his party. And there's a beautiful message over there as well for our lives. Are we a beautiful person or not? Sometimes we look at ourselves and we say, I don't think I'm that beautiful. Sometimes we look at another person, we say, that person doesn't look too pretty. And you know what Hillel would tell you? Who asked you? You don't think she's pretty? You don't think he's pretty? But guess what? This is not your world. This is God's world. This is not your life, it's God's life. God chose us. God created us. God wants us to be here. God entered into a relationship with us. God obviously thinks that we are worthy and beautiful. So you have no right to say otherwise. Isn't that a beautiful idea? And Judaism says number one of humility is get out of your own head. You don't think you're beautiful, you have to know God knows that you're beautiful. And God looks at you as special, and God created you with tremendous gifts and exactly who you are for who you need to be. And this is something that in Judaism, there's a bunch of different texts over here, which I wish we had time to go through all of them. But let's just read one little text over here. Beautiful Hasidic text. Text 14, page 28. And Reuven, you give us a read on page 28.
Just as we must believe in God, so too we must afterward believe in ourselves. And God cares about us, that we are not worthless laborers, that we possess divine souls, and that Hashem makes pleasure and joy when we fulfill His desire.
It's an amazing text. In Judaism, there's an idea to believe in God. You know who else we're supposed to believe in? In ourselves. The exact same way. We have to believe in ourselves. Healthy Jewish living, and this is part of humility. This is very much a part of humility. Is appreciating that we are creation of God. If we woke up this morning, God chose us, and we have tremendous power. And I want you to read, you should know. After class, I want you to read some of these texts that we're skipping. Some beautiful, beautiful texts. Judaism says, when you feel that you are lowly, that you are not worthy, when you feel that you're not beautiful and don't have the strength and potential, that is not coming from a good place. That is not humility. That's a false humility. It's a lie. It's inappropriate. A Jew should never feel that way. How does this fit in with humility? This is part of humility. Step one of humility is being fully aware and appreciating and internally celebrating who we are. And that's part of humility. Let's read this next text. You want to read? Text 15 on page 29. Beautiful, beautiful text. And we have to discuss this more.
Humility is not synonymous with inferiority. It is not due to lack of inner good or to being on a bad path, heaven forbid. We should contemplate how all the good we possess is an inheritance from our ancestors. We should not take credit for our belief in God or for our willingness to give up our lives for our faith, because these are natural, inborn traits we inherited from our ancestor Abraham. This is the idea of humility. We do not take credit for the good we possess, knowing that our attainments are not our own doing, but something we receive by inheritance. This is the meaning of the verse. Moshe was exceedingly humble, more than any person on the face of the earth. Moses was cognizant of his own qualities and was aware that his lofty spiritual level was unparalleled, but he was still humble. He recognized that all of these qualities were given to him from above. He felt that if another person would be endowed with the same abilities and qualities as he, the other would have equaled his achievements or perhaps even surpassed them. It was this that led Moshe to be the humblest man of all.
Okay, so we have a few big ideas over here, very powerful ideas. Number one, inferiority is usually a negation of truth. We have such a low self-image, we can't even appreciate who we are. Humility is the opposite. It is absolutely being aware of who we are and the powers that we possess. At the same time, it's knowing that it's not that we have these powers because, oh, I'm special. It's knowing that these are gifts given to us from God. And humility means we know our strengths, we use our strengths, but we are always aware and we are always thankful that God gave me these gifts. And we could even think, which is what Moses felt, but maybe if God gave these leadership skills to somebody else, they would have been an even better leader than me. You know, when we say that Moses was humble, it doesn't mean that he was meek and weak and fragile and scared. Moses was one of the greatest leaders who ever lived. He spoke truth to power. He took the Jews out of Egypt. He led with all the problems for 40 years. He was a tremendous leader. He had the chutzpah to even confront God when he felt he needs to speak up for his people. There was no greater leader that ever lived than Moses. Humility is part of that. It's appreciating God created me the way I am with these gifts, and if I see where I need to show up to life, you fully throw yourself in over there. But always within appreciating this larger context. So let's put up over here these few ideas. This is what we have so far. Humility does not mean inferiority. Humility is not synonymous with inferiority. Humility does not negate the truth of who you are. The opposite, it fully embraces exactly who you are. And humility, number three, does not come from a low self-image because you know your shortcomings. No, that's nothing to do with humility. Humility doesn't mean feeling low or bad or negative about yourself. Okay. So humility really comes from knowing our strengths. This is the idea. All right, one more slide over here. And this is the self-concept that Judaism wants us to have. I have one more idea I want to add here to humility, but this is the idea that Judaism says. If you have this humility self-concept, where number one, you know your intrinsic worth. Number three, you know your vast capabilities, and you have a sense of humility, you're humble, and you see the good things in life as gifts. This is part of it. You know that God gave you certain gifts of life, that God needs you here, God placed you with these capabilities, and you fully appreciate that and embrace it. Judaism says this is the key to happiness. This is the mindset you need when you live to be happy. You know your strengths, you are thankful for them, and you fully exploit them to be the best person you could be and to show up where God needs you. If there are certain talents you don't have, it doesn't bother you. You see yourself from God's perspective. God thinks I'm worthy. God thinks I'm beautiful, and God created me exactly as I am with my capabilities and with my lack of capabilities in whatever areas there are. And this is who God needs me to be and to fully embrace that. This is the way Judaism wants us to see ourselves. This is the definition of humility. And the verse says, like we learned before, the humble shall increase their joy in God. This is the way you need to see yourself. There's one final ingredient, which is perhaps the most critical ingredient in humility. Perhaps this is the most radical idea of humility. So far, what do we have in humility? There's a few steps over here. Humility is very much about fully appreciating who we are, but realizing that these are gifts endowed by us by God, and to be humble within that framework, to see it from God's perspective, to see these as gifts, and to know that God holds us as tremendously worthy, And therefore, we have the full confidence. It's not self-confidence. It's God confidence. That's the difference. It's confidence not in myself. It's confidence in a higher power. To be the best people we could be. To show up for a life where God needs us to show up. But there's one final ingredient of humility, which is unbelievably radical. It's always good to end on a radical note. I want to read 2 texts with you. These are unbelievable texts. Very special texts. Elke, let's do the first. Text 16a on page 31.
When someone senses his head or one of his limbs, it indicates illness. A healthy person does not feel his limbs. The same applies in the spiritual sense when the person senses his own existence, and this is the definition of arrogance. This indicates a spiritual illness. A spiritually healthy person does not sense himself.
Part of humility is to get out of your own head. The defining factor of both somebody who is arrogant and somebody who has a low self-esteem is that they're full of themselves. They can't stop thinking about themselves. And Jewish spirituality teaches, 1 second, there's a rule in life. We all have many body parts. Ideally, we should never be feeling any of our body parts. So for example, all of us are right now using our eyes. All of us are using our ears. We're using our hands. We have 10 toes, 10 toenails. The good news is that we are not consciously feeling any of them. If you feel it, what does that mean? You're sick. Something is unhealthy. You shouldn't be feeling your nail. You shouldn't be feeling your eyes. You're using them 100%, but don't feel it. Jewish spirituality teaches a radical idea. You're not supposed to feel yourself. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not conscious. You're very conscious. You're very present. But you're not always focusing inward upon yourself. But you're fully showing up to life, and in a certain way, you're beyond yourself. And we have to define this. If you're too into yourself, that is sick. You cannot be happy. You're not healthy. You're not supposed to sense yourself. Life is supposed to happen somewhat transcendent from too much of the feeling of self. Now, this is radical. So we have to define this a little bit better. Let's do this next text. Another Hasidic text from a mimer, from a Hasidic discourse. So Anna, text 16b on page 31.
Okay. Humility means that the person does not sense his own existence. Despite all of his good, he does not think of himself as an object of significance. He does not claim credit or think that he has specially standing. The humble person is completely absorbed in himself.
This is the final characteristic of being in the frame of mind of humility. Not being self-absorbed, but go beyond yourself. Live life and tap into life in a way that you somewhat transcend your very own self. Now, interestingly, there's such a concept in psychology, which is called being in a flow. Now, we all experience this. Whenever there's like a very important task, either it's a very powerful mental task or a physical task, and we get into the right flow, we sometimes literally lose a sense of ourselves. Like if we're painting or we're writing. So it's very often when we do something creative or we're climbing, we're going on a hike. And all of a sudden we could sometimes transcend time, transcend ourselves to a point that we were fully utilizing ourselves. It wasn't like we shut down. We were fully conscious. We're using our talents, but in a way where we somehow got out of our own head. We entered into a state of flow. So I want to put this up over here. Flow means the mental state of a person who's completely immersed in a challenging physical or mental task. Let's read this text, which is a text from psychology. But I think it somewhat reflects this idea that Judaism is trying to teach us about not sensing ourselves. So Susan, give us a read on text 17 on page 32.
When an activity is thoroughly engrossing, there is not enough attention left over to allow a person to consider either the past or the future or any other temporarily irrelevant stimuli. One item that disappears from awareness deserves special attention because in normal life we spend so much time thinking about it. our own self. In flow, there is no room for self-scrutiny. When a climber is making a difficult ascent, he is totally taken up in the mountaineering role. He is 100% a climber, or he would not survive. There is no way for anything or anybody to bring into question any other aspect of his self. The absence of the self from consciousness does not mean that a person in flow has given up the control of his psychic energy, or that she is unaware of what happens in her body or in her mind. In fact, the opposite is usually true. A violinist must be extremely aware of every movement of her fingers, as well as the sound entering her ears, and of the total form of the piece she is playing. Loss of consciousness does not involve a loss of self, and certainly not a loss of consciousness, but rather only a loss of consciousness of the self. What slips below the threshold of awareness is the concept of self, the information we use to represent to ourselves who we are, and being able to forget temporarily who we are seems to be very enjoyable.
This idea of being in a sense of flow, which means going beyond the consciousness of the self. I love that idea. It's not losing self-consciousness, it's losing consciousness of the self because you're so engrossed in something beyond you. Humility, according to Judaism, means living a life, not of inertia, not where all your energy is focused on me, but is focused outward. And in a certain sense, losing some of that self-engrossment, some of that self-obsession, right? And living a little bit beyond yourself, getting into the flow of life. This is one of the most important ingredients to happiness. Judaism says ultimate humility. To be happy is when you have a lack of consciousness of the self due to being engrossed in your mission in life. And the opposite of this is both the arrogant person and the person with low self-esteem. Both of these people are suffering from non-stop being focused and consumed with themselves. They can't stop thinking, do people like me? Do people not like me? Am I doing a good job? Am I doing a bad job? They're so self-conscious. They can't get out of their own head. Judaism says like this: we, human beings, were not created to be needy people. Serving ourselves does not make us happy. Sitting down and watching a movie and sitting down and giving ourselves good food does not create happiness. It creates the opposite, because it's not who we are. We were created with a purpose, with a mission in life, to be givers, to be there, to show up for life and to give of ourselves to the world, to live for something a little bit higher. When we do that, we get into the flow of life. We get into life itself, into the energy of life. That is happiness. That is joy. And psychology says this itself. When people give, they are happy. When people go a little bit beyond themselves, they're happy. The Rebbe said this in such a beautiful way. The Rebbe said, we all know we have a body in the sky. It's called the sun. And the sun is amazing. All the blessings of life, all physical blessings, that comes through the sun. Warmth. It could also cause destruction. But all good things. Happiness comes when there's sun. Growth of plants all comes from the sun. The amazing thing is that the sun is, relatively speaking, a very not powerful body in the heavens. There's something called a black hole. Black holes are immeasurably more powerful than the sun. So why don't we see black holes? What's the difference between the sun and a black hole? A black hole is taking all of its energy and bringing it in. It's focusing it inward. And therefore, number one, it's black. It's not giving anything. And it's a source of destruction. The sun is a much weaker force. But all of its energy is going outward. So it's beautiful. It's radiant. It's healthy. We as humans have a choice to make. Where does our focus go? Outward or inward? Inward, Judaism says, means you're not healthy. This is not the healthy place for a human being. Humility means that you get a little bit out of your own head. Be a sun, not a black hole. This is the key to humility. I want to read one more text with you, and then we're going to wrap up over here. Text 18, where are we holding? Remind me your first name.
Ted,
Ted. All right. Text 18, page 33.
there are multiple ways that kindness can make us happier. Surveys of volunteers, for example, show that volunteering is associated with diminished depressive symptoms and enhanced feelings of happiness, self-worth, mastery, and personal control. A helper's high. Consider an unusual study that had followed 5 women volunteers over a 3-year period. These 5 women, all of whom had multiple sclerosis, MS, were chosen to act as peer supporters for 67 other MS patients. They were trained in active and compassionate listening techniques and instructed to call each patient for 15 minutes once a month. The results show that over the 3 years, the peer supporters experienced increased satisfaction, self-efficacy, and feelings of mastery. They reported engaging in more social activities and enduring less depression.
We all know this. When we are giving, we are happier. There's something called the giver's high. We feel good. So, dear friends, I want to close with a final little. While I was studying for this course, I had an interesting little memory. I was once meeting with a woman, and she was very passionate. Oh, you know what I'm talking about. She was very passionate about youth mental health in our community. It really bothered her, and she maybe wanted to put money into a program. How do we get our teenagers to start feeling better about herself? So I met with her to hash out some ideas. What she was all into is that there's not enough self-care. Self-care, we need to promote self-care. So I told her, maybe self-care is the problem. Maybe we're doing too much self-care. Maybe what our youth need is something a little bit outside of the self. It was such a radical idea, she thought I was crazy. What do you mean? That's what we need. We're not taking good care enough of ourselves. Self-care, more self-care. That's not what we're missing today. What we're missing is humility. Humility means get out of your own way. Start being a son. Start living for something beyond. Get in the flow of life. So, dear friends, these are the 3 ideas. Number 1, God created man as a purposeful being. We're here for a purpose. We're not here as needy creatures. Number 2, our purpose is to accomplish and to throw ourselves into things that are beyond ourselves. And number 3, when we do that, such a person is in tune and in flow with life. And that is happiness. So, dear friends, I want to conclude. Every single week we're going to have a little exercise. The exercise for this week is to try to practice humility. And specifically, it's on page 35, the exercise for this week, to perform 5 acts of kindness. And on page 35 it says it doesn't have to be for the same person. The person doesn't have to be aware of them. But let's try to find moments between this week, between today, Wednesday, and next week, Wednesday, when we meet again, to live for something greater, do something that we don't need to do, not part of our job, not one of our responsibilities, but to live for something outside of ourselves. Let's try to get into a little bit more flow. Now, dear friends, this was actually a pretty deep idea. I wanted to go back, read the texts about humility. There's a lot to study, a lot to integrate. This is a very big idea. And what Judaism says, this has nothing to do with either end of the spectrum that we were talking about earlier. Both the arrogant person and the person with low self-esteem are both suffering equally from a lack of humility. They are not getting outside of their heads, and they're not seeing things from a larger perspective. The starting point of how happiness thinks is this. This is humility. This is the Jewish self-concept. This is our exercise for this week to perform 5 acts of kindness. And dear friends, with that we conclude for tonight. Next week is the joy of purpose, facing stress with patience, mindfulness, and hope. Thank you so much for joining us as we begin our journey. And dear friends, it's only going to get better. Going on next week. And that's a wrap. Thank you. You're very welcome.